Dr. Jeff talks love, Dr. Jeff talks life, answers your questions, cuts through the strife. Sex and intimacy, real and true, evidence-based, made just for you.
Hello, welcome to Dr. Jeff Talks About Sex and Intimacy, where we explore the science, the psychology, and heart of human connection. I'm Dr. Jeff Albaugh, and today we're exploring a topic that often hides in plain sight in relationships. What it really means to have well-rounded intimacy. Yes, today you're joining us for episode 62. Crazy. It's called Beyond Sex, Creating Well-Rounded Intimacy That Lasts. Whether you're watching live or listening to the recording later, every moment of your amazing life counts. So I count it a true blessing that you have taken time out of your busy life to improve your intimacy and deepen your relationships and be a part of this podcast. So thank you for joining us. I sincerely thank you. And I want you to know you're exactly why this podcast exists for you. We're connected across so many different platforms. So we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on LinkedIn. And if you're on X and you need to ask a question, pop over to one of the other platforms, including StreamYard, so you can interact with us. A quick favor, if you are on Facebook, the more people who watch us on Facebook, the more we can do on Facebook. So please put us in your favorites, and that will do it. Thank you. Visit the website. You can go to all the incredible past episodes. We have had so many amazing guests on. You can pull up the calendar and see what's coming up next. All kinds of good things on that website. So go there and find out more. You can take us with you when you're working out, when you're on the road trips. We can go where you go. In your car, we are on Amazon Music, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and more. So take us with you. You can learn more. You can deepen your relationships while you're on the road. As always, I just want to take a moment to remind everyone that all are welcome here. Whatever your sexual orientation, your gender identity, or your relationship style, we are so glad you're here, and you are so welcome here. The mission of the podcast is really simple. It is to empower and enlighten you with the evidence-based scientific information you need to make informed choices to improve your sexual health and deepen your loving relationships so you can live your one miraculous life more fully and with more love. So when couples tell me they've lost the spark, what they're often describing isn't just a sexual issue. It's usually something broader, something quieter, a slow drift in emotional closeness, curiosity, playfulness. Playfulness is highly underrated, or shared meaning. Sexual intimacy doesn't decline in isolation. It reflects the overall health of the relational ecosystem. It's all important and it all works together. Today, we're exploring what it means to cultivate a well-rounded intimacy in your relationship. Not just sex, but the multiple dimensions of connection that make desire sustainable over time. My guest today I'm very excited about is Claire Postl, and she helps couples understand the patterns that we fall into, patterns that may feel stable or even functional on the surface, but can unintentionally dampen erotic energy and emotional closeness. This conversation will offer you a new lens for understanding intimacy. Who doesn't want more of that? Not as a single behavior, but as a dynamic system that requires balance, differentiation, safety, and growth. So my guest tonight, Claire Postl, she is a licensed professional clinical counselor specializing in couples therapy and relational intimacy. She works with individuals and partners to better understand the emotional patterns, the attachment dynamics and communication styles that shape their relationships. Claire integrates evidence-based therapeutic models with the systemic lens, helping couples move beyond blame, which is really not helpful, and towards deeper awareness, differentiation, and connection. Her work focuses on expanding the definition of intimacy: emotional, intellectual, physical, and erotic intimacy. So partners can build relationships that support both security and desire. Known for her compassionate and insightful approach, Claire empowers couples to recognize the patterns that limit sustainable sexual intimacy and to develop healthier and more resilient ways of relating. I couldn't be more happy to welcome my guest and colleague, friend, Claire Postl. Welcome, Claire.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
I'm so glad you're here, and I can't wait to hear your presentation. So without further ado, let's get into it. It's all yours.
Yeah, so let's talk about intimacy and how to create a well-rounded intimacy that lasts in relationships. So I do a lot of couples work, and often I ask them, I'm like, what does intimacy look like in your relationship? And I think for the most part, people jump to, well, and mind you, I do a lot of sex therapy. And so usually people are coming to me like, well, we're not having any sex. And like, cool. And so it's a lot of explaining what all intimacy entails. And so I think to start off, I should kind of talk about what I mean when I'm talking about intimacy. So we often think of it as sex. And then people think sex is penetration. And so anytime I'm asking, what does intimacy look like? It's penetration. And that's very limiting. And so I explained to people, I'm like, well, no, there's a lot of different ways that we connect with people. And that's what intimacy is. It's a form of connecting with others. And so we have intimacy in all types of relationships. We have intimacy with our peers, our colleagues, our friends, our children, and then with our partners. And so there's a lot of differentiation that can happen. And so being able to educate couples about the different types of intimacy so that they can really strengthen their relationship, because it is often that people are looking at sexual intimacy or for the lack of variety, penetration as the only means of connection and intimacy, in really failing kind of the well-roundedness that all the different types of intimacies bring into relationships. And so this is kind of a model that I like to kind of share with patients to think about intimacy. And so emotional intimacy is kind of the bottom rung. It is the friendship. It is what makes us feel connected and close. It's often like we have a lot of emotional intimacy with friends. We have emotional intimacy with family members. But it's a pretty important thing. And so usually I ask people when talking about emotional intimacy, it's like, what is your friendship like? Like, how emotionally connected do you feel? And it's really a foundation of a relationship that gets neglected. We have a lot of people who, well, I'll ask them, like, how do you guys communicate? What do you do to hang out with each other? Like, oh, we don't, but we want to fix our sex life. And I was like, oof, that's going to be rough, because that is going to feel like just kind of having sex with someone maybe you don't even know, which is totally fine, but not usually what is expected when we're with a long-term partner. And then there's that is the foundation that we build relationships on. And so this kind of mirrors a lot of the teachings that people, or the pedagogy of different couples approaches, is like the emotional intimacy, the friendship, the trust, the communication, that kind of bottom rung. But then like the next tier is physical intimacy. And so it has to kind of we have to have emotional intimacy and safety to build good physical intimacy. And so we'll talk more about that and then there's sexual intimacy at the top. And so it almost looks like a food pyramid. And I think that's a good comparison, because what we don't need is a ton of sexual intimacy to feel connected with our partners. It's kind of like the sugars in our life. It's really high arousal. It feels really good, but we can feel connected in a lot of other ways. And so this kind of outlines like emotional intimacy. We need a lot of it. We need a lot of trust. We need communication. We need a lot of connection to be able to stack up a good foundation of intimacy. But we see a lot of couples kind of falling off of this. And so it's something that I'm asking couples all the time. And I'm like, okay, well, what does emotional intimacy look like? How are you connecting with each other? What are you doing in terms of physical intimacy? What does affection look like throughout your week? And honestly, like, mind you, and Dr. Jeff can maybe attest to some of this, when people are coming to sex therapy, it's usually because something has gone wrong. And so often they'll say, oh, our problem is sex. But when we actually break it down, it's like, well, no, sex is maybe the thing that got us in the door, but we haven't had really emotional intimacy. We can't really talk about the things that are going on in our relationship. We're not really touching each other. We're not connecting on a physical level. And our brain needs physical touch. It's kind of wired into our programming. And we're not really doing that either. And so, yeah, no wonder your sexual relationship is kind of lacking. And so I use this kind of as a foundation to think about intimacy so that we know how to build it. How can we build sexual intimacy that is good and consistent and stable? We have to kind of do a bottom up approach. And so here are, when we think of emotional and sexual intimacy, what are they? And so emotional intimacy is really communication. It is going on dates, it's playing board games, it's spending quality time together. I have a lot of people who are like, oh, we watch TV together. Cool. Are you communicating? Are you connecting? Are you sharing your fears, your highs, your wins? Are you sharing your anger, your disappointment, your feelings of failure with each other? Are we being each other's person? And then it's about knowing someone's needs, predicting someone's needs. So there's a lot of research on emotional intimacy and the impact that it has on interest and sexual desire for mainly women. While men, and not to talk in kind of binary terms, but men do, they get a lot more from physical touch and sexual satisfaction, while women might need more emotional stability. And we look back from an anthropology approach, and that makes more sense. But it's knowing needs, predicting needs, feeling like someone is seeing us for who we are. And it makes us feel connected. It makes us feel like, oh, this person gets me and they are my person. And then, like, again, kind of going back, the second rung is physical intimacy. And so this is affection. This is hugging, kissing, cuddling, back rubs, hand holding. I always tell people, I'm like, brush each other's hair. That's a very erotic thing to do, but it's not necessarily sexual. It's very physical intimacy. It's very intimate. Tickling, though. Now, mind you, I wrote these down, and for some people, some of these do feel kind of sexual in nature, and that is okay. Everyone kind of has the blend between these two is kind of personal, and so it's something I kind of pick apart with patients, but. These are really common physical intimacies that people talk about, but it's really safe. I'm going to talk about safety, non-sexual physical touch. Safety is a big part of why sex becomes dampened or difficult. And it doesn't necessarily have to be physical safety, but it has to be about emotional safety for physical intimacy. And we'll talk more about that in a second. And so then what is sexual intimacy? Because everyone wants to call it penetration. And while that can be a part of it, there's a lot of things that are sexual. And so I have a lot of people who maybe can't engage in penetration, and they will come to me and they'll say, oh, well, I've never had sex. And I said, you have, you're engaging in other types of sexual activity, and those are sex. And so what does that include? That can include genital touching, breast touching, nudity. And again, that kind of brings on both physical and intimacy. Some people just being naked around each other can just feel like a physical intimacy and not necessarily sexual. But then I have a lot of people who it maybe feels a little bit more sexual in nature. Oral sex, so providing some sort of oral stimulation to either your genitals or body parts. Digital stimulation, so that's with your hands. Digital penetration, anal penetration, vaginal penetration. There's a variety, and these are, not all of them, but it's not just intercourse. And that is a big thing that I talk about, because when we put the focus on intercourse, everything almost doesn't stack up to it, and we stop doing it. And so here is a model that I think, again, this is how kind of I describe it to people. And all providers kind of describe it differently. Emily Nagoski does a great job to kind of describing kind of this high pressure on penetration and how we need to kind of break this up. But we become kind of linear in our patterns with sex once we've kind of established a relationship. So linear in that it is routine, it lacks variety, it lacks communication, and everything leads to penetration. And so I'll show a diagram in a second. Actually, I'll show it right now. Let's do this. So this is linear. So often, once a couple engages in sexual activity, or even, dare I say, penetration, everything leads to penetration. And it is heartbreaking. And so anytime I have a young audience in front of me, I say, don't do this. Do not form a linear pattern. I have teenagers, and the second we start talking about their own kind of sexual intimacy, which they're not quite there, but once we get there, I will be preaching this to them, that not everything has to lead to penetration. Because if penetration is not wanted by one or both people, we throw the baby out with the bathwater. We don't engage in kissing. We don't engage in any sort of touching. We don't engage in just oral sex. It's like, oh, well, if we're not doing penetration, we're not doing anything. And that is devastating, because it makes all those other things feel like we can't do those. And then we can't engage in a connective activity in intimacy, in a sexual intimacy. And so even though kind of on that lower rung, so kissing and touching, those might be just physical intimacies. So again, people are not engaging in physical intimacies. And so going back, instead, I'm talking to patients about a more dynamic approach to intimacy. So change that an intimacy or sexual activities that change based on desires and needs. So one person can be saying, hey, what if we have some sexual activity today? And the other person's like, you know what? I'm feeling really kind of disconnected from you. Can we do some physical intimacy first? Hey, can we play a board game and really connect on an emotional level? Because I feel like I haven't seen you all day, and this feels like a drastic change. And so it tends to be a little bit more dynamic. It's more variety. So we don't get in these ruts of routine. I cannot tell you how it's funny in like a not a funny haha way, where I have couples who will come in and they'll say, I can tell you exactly what we do sexually. We do this, and then we do this, and then we do that, and then it's over. And I'm like, every time? And they're like, for the most part. And so a more dynamic approach, it's varied. It has a ton more variety that we can engage in and get excited about. We can try new things. We can leaves kind of more room for possibilities. It also fosters more communication, because we have to communicate. It gets us away from chore sex. And so again, kind of in a more routine linear pattern, people develop chore sex where it's like, okay, let's do it. And they're not voicing like, hey, you know what I think I'd really like? I'd really like this. And so we put a little bit more focus on pleasure and connection. So thinking about intimacy from a more dynamic approach. Okay, and what does that mean? And so this is, instead of that linear model, I'm kind of a math nerd, so this is what I call more a plane. It's not a line, it's a plane. But it has a different variety of all different types of intimacies, where we can say, you know what, let's daydream together, and then we'll make out, and maybe that's all we do. Because who makes out with their partner just to make out anymore after they've been in a relationship for a certain amount of time? Yeah, no one does. And so get back to that, because those are the things that foster connection, that foster interest in each other and desire. So there's a lot of research on desire. And what the research shows is that women desire discrepancies in relationships tend to be where women, and again, I don't love the genderedness of research talk, but women tend to develop lower desire throughout a long-term relationship. While men, it maybe stays a little bit more stable. It can peter out as well, but that tends to be the dynamic when there's a desire discrepancy. But if we do more things that foster that connection, both people can maybe meet more in the middle of that discrepancy. And so men who maybe need more sexual and physical intimacy or desire that for connection, we can do more of those if they don't lead to sex all the time. Because our partners sometimes put a guard up where it's like, you know what, I'm not feeling like daydreaming together and making out with each other is safe because it leads to sexual. I don't want to do it. And so being able to be like, well, you know what, let's daydream together and just make out. Let's call it that. Or, oh my gosh, let's just do oral sex today because it's fun. We both get a lot of pleasure out of it. And it's not something we do without it leading to penetration. You would be shocked at how excited people get when we break this away. We break this kind of expectation where it has to be linear. It leads more variety and it leads more room for negotiation. We can also try new things with this. So being able to be like, you know what, I saw this thing, or, it's often like pop culture. So when Outlander was really big, I cannot tell you how many people were turned on and like, oh, maybe we could do a little bit of role play. But it was more the people who were not stuck in this linear pattern where it felt like, oh, we can't do this because there's no negotiation of what we're doing. And so being able to think about this because we're leading to more connection throughout. And so this is, again, kind of going back to the first slide, this is how we maintain well-rounded intimacy. We kind of heavy hand emotional intimacy. And so being able to think about like how are we connecting each other on an emotional level every single day? What are we doing to express physical intimacy and show gestures of physical intimacy every single day? And then sexual intimacy, again, it doesn't have to be every day. I have a lot of people be like, well, how much are we doing? And I'm sure Dr. Jeff has talked a lot about this, but I have people who they think there's like 2 to 3 times a week is the ideal. Like, no, you could have some sort of sexual activity once a month if you guys are well-rounded in these other physical intimacies or other types of intimacies, physical and emotional, because we won't be so desperate for sexual intimacy to be that connected piece that we'll feel very satiated in terms of connection and closeness. But it's scary for some people to kind of broach this. And so I have some kind of takeaway points that I encourage everyone to kind of think about, but we need to challenge cultural ideals of what intimacy is. It is not just sex. We need to be thinking about all the different types of intimacy. We need to be thinking about how we're connecting emotionally, how we're connecting physically, how we're connecting sexually. And it cannot just be penetration, because penetration isn't always available. As people age, it becomes a little bit more difficult. And so this will also help people cope with loss and change with aging, or even just situational changes. We'll know how to keep connecting without it being just penetration. If you want sustainable intimacy, flex all types of intimacies. So like I said, thinking about this kind of foundation, this food pyramid. I know food pyramids are outdated. I'm aware of that. But for this, it's perfect. It's a perfect analogy. But we need to flex all types. How are we connecting with each other on all aspects of ourselves? And then we need to communicate what we want and what we need every single time. I have a huge problem with people who don't directly communicate. Not problem with people, except I love all my patients. But I have a huge issue with people who don't communicate what they want and need every single time. They rely on their partner to be like, well, they know what I like. Well, yeah, but what if your body changes? What if they're doing something and they don't know that it's a little off, or you're a little sore, or it's not feeling as good? And it's a lot about kind of where your cognitive space is. And if we're not communicating that, we could be missing our mark. And I think that leads to a lot of unhealthy sexual activity. In some people, it becomes maybe more tolerated activity, or again, kind of chore sex. So we have to be communicating. Think like every single time we're engaging in some sort of intentional connection. Hey, how do you want to connect today? And so if some person says, hey, I really want to connect sexually, if you're not jiving on that, be able to be like, you know what, I'm really not into that. I want some other type of intimacy. I still want to connect with you, but it doesn't have to be through sex. And so communicate. And don't fall into a linear rut. And please, if you have children, talk to them about not falling into linear sex, being able to think about sex as a plane so we can keep it sustainable and long term. It's just not enough as a linear. We need to keep safety in all types of sex and intimacy. Okay, that is all I have. And I would love to open up to questions.
Awesome. So many thoughts. Gosh, a lot of great information, and I love all of it. And I really like how you talk about those linear patterns. And I have so many couples like you who are like, okay, this is what we do. I touch her here, she touches me there, we do this. We know this works, and this is how we work it. Everybody's happy. We're done. But they're not happy and satisfied with that.
Or I don't know if you've ever had this where I will have someone and they'll be like, and I know this person likes it, and then their partner's like, well, actually, I don't actually like that, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how long has this been happening for?
Right.
It's really terrifying.
I've been doing that, but that's not my favorite thing. That's not my favorite journey. You know,
I thought you liked that. Like, no one likes that.
It's so, when you crack open that communication and that discussion, you discover all kinds of things, you know, and like you said, when it's that scripted, it has to be done exactly this way. Sometimes it's just another, like you said, another box you tick. Okay, we got that done today. And is it really enjoyable? Because what are the goals when you're not procreating? It's pleasure and connection. Mm-hmm. And if you're not having pleasure and connection because you're just ticking a box, probably not the best thing to do, right?
Yeah, I really like, I'm not sure, there's different, again, kind of researchers out there who talk about this, but I really like the good enough sex model where it's like, yes, what are we trying to get out of this? Yes. And I will ask that to couples, and they're like, well, I don't know, like, so that this person doesn't bother me for another week. And yes. I was like, oh, we're missing our marks. This is not fun. This is not what sex is about, guys. And so being able to talk about, like, what are we trying to get out of this?
Yeah. Barry McCarthy talks a lot about good enough sex model, and he was on the show and was talking about some different things. And he was talking about responsive desire, which people don't always understand too, you know? So I think it's so important. And two, you know, you talk a lot about, you know, figure out what's going to work for you and think out of the box, because we're all, through society, through culture, through religion, we're trained to believe sex has to be this way or that way. And it's so untrue. Even like people will be like, we don't have sex anymore because by the time I hit the bed, I'm so tired. I'm like, well, why do you have sex just when you go to bed? That's not a good time. You are tired then, you know? It's
the worst time to do it.
And sometimes they'll be like, yeah, especially like with the pandemic and people working from home. I'm like, you could have a great sex lunch break, or
let's bring back nooners, you know, is that a thing? Is that a thing still?
Yes. Or, you know, like sometimes you both had your shower first thing in the morning. It's like, hey, you know, great time to have some sex.
That's the perfect time. That's when people are kind of, their body's best primed. Yeah.
One of my couples too that I work with talked about, they developed this thing called pillow talk, and I love it. And, you know, my wife and I too, we've learned, we used to be like, you know, now that she's retired and I'm not working as much, sometimes we have these days off together, and we used to always be like, make up the bed, go on, get everything. And so now we've learned, leave the bed unmade, because what we do a lot of times is, like you said, we'll be like, later we have a break, there's not that much going on. You know, you just jump back in the bed, and it's not because we're like, oh, let's take off our clothes and have sex. Yeah. We just cuddle and we have some great conversations, that pillow talk, you know, and, cuddling increases dopamine. A hug for like 20 seconds or more increases dopamine levels. All kinds of good things that make you feel more attracted, more satiated, more in tune with each other, right?
Yes. Yeah. And that creates a kind of a safe place to be able to do that. And we can decide to have sex if you want to, but we can also just hang out. We can do other things. And I don't know if I talk to people about this all the time, because I work with a lot of people with kind of post fertility and fertility concerns. And it's a lot of like, you know, that we encourage people to do a ton of skin to skin with their babies, but you know, like everyone gets something from that. Like you can do that with your partner, be naked around each other without any pressure that it has to go anywhere. Let's touch each other's skin, get that skin to skin contact. But it definitely goes by the wayside when, I know lives get busy, for sure. We can't be walking around naked all the time, but yes, let's bring back the nooner.
We're doing so much and so many things. But then, like you said too, The fun of it can be just, what will it be this time? And maybe, and two, even some people think, well, it has to be equal. Maybe today was about your orgasm and I didn't have one. Oh, that
Yeah.
might build tension. People are freaked out. So what? There's always tomorrow, you know?
Yeah, I don't like when I worked in men's health. So I worked in urology for a little bit, which is how actually I think Matt Jeff
Yes.
was through working in men's health, and so one of the things that I found just crazy was how people don't understand that men don't need to have orgasms every time, and how uncomfortable it makes people where it's like, well, they need to do this, otherwise, what's going to happen? I'm like, their erection will go away,
Oh,
and
but
we move on.
they'll get blue balls or, all these mythical things that you're like, not really.
It might hurt a little bit, but I think we'll move on. Or, you say, here's the lotion. Best of luck to you. I felt really connected during our time. And now if you need to, take the reins, totally, that's not our responsibility. But I do think like we put a lot of pressure on orgasms and being able to look that we can experience pleasure in other ways that doesn't have to just be orgasm, so that we can, open this idea up a little bit more. It's a little too restricted.
And two, like maybe the next orgasm will be even more powerful and more wonderful because we did delay it. Everybody knows that that can be that way, a little bit of that edging. You get close, you did all these things, but you didn't. So then later it's like, oh, this is built up more, and I really only good things can come. Experiment, have fun. And I also love that you brought up even the same person. Yes, yesterday I wanted it painstakingly slow, but today I'm not in that place. Let's get on with it. And, so it's okay. We all have variety is just amazing.
It is so important, and not just in variety in terms of what we're doing sexually. Like when I am talking to people about sex, I'm like, don't just do penetration. Let's keep this well rounded. And sometimes I'll even encourage people. I'm like, if you're going to do penetration, fine. Don't let it be the end of a sexual encounter, because we do put a lot of focus on male orgasm as like the end of an encounter, and be like, no, like if that happens, just keep going. Like, people can still feel pleasure, but just in general, kind of all intimacies, let's stretch all of this. Like, how do we kind of step outside our comfort zone and make sure that we're doing all of them still, because it is really kind of the thing that goes often in relationships is all the intimacies.
Even that coast-coital, that coast-penetration cuddling, that closeness that happens from having had so much body-to-body contact, that can all be amazing. And two, and people, I tell my patients too, here is your bar of where you're successful with that sex and intimacy. Did you have fun and pleasure? And did you feel deeply connected to your partner? And if those are your two goals, you made them. You can do that through an amazing cuddle. You don't have to have any orgasms, right?
Yeah.
It's taking the
You
pressure.
do that through a card game together, like, wow,
Yes.
we're connected, or,
Yes.
together sentences. You're like, yeah.
Even I'll say, okay, now you got to be a little careful, but like we have a lot of restaurants here where you eat with your hands and you feed each other, and different ethnicities.
Yeah.
How fun. Or even some of the hot things, and you feed each other, and I said, you're out in public, but it can still be very sensual, very intimate, and very wonderful. And
Yes.
so what if other people are going, wow, get a room?
We're really into that food. Yeah, we are.
It's like, what did they order? That must be really good. We have a couple questions. I think they're good ones. This is the first one. Sometimes it feels like my partner and I have fallen into roles. One of us manages everything and the other goes along with it. How do these kinds of relationship patterns affect sexual desire? Because it seems to be affecting ours.
Yeah, I'm assuming that talking about kind of like chores and roles. Do you think that's accurate?
And I think, yeah, I do.
Hugely, especially like I think in TikTok and social media, the kind of mental load, or I'm drawing a blank now, but it's like not mental, I forget the word, but it's kind of like the mental load can fall on one person, and it's like this person feels responsible for everything, and it can really impact that feeling of connection. And it's like it kind of goes back to that emotional intimacy, where if that is happening, what's going on in that rung of intimacy that we're not able to share some of that this person is not seeing me as I'm kind of drowning in life, but is asking me to have sex with them, like, and feeling really kind of turned off by it. Because I think, like, one of the things, and so when preparing for this conversation, there is a lot of like discussion about not wanting to become enmeshed, avoiding enmeshment, because that's a turn off. And don't be too emotionally intimate, because that can be enmeshment. That's not enmeshment. As Sarah Perel will probably agree with me, that is not enmeshment. But having someone understand what we're experiencing, and even just validating it, or saying, hey, let me take some of that off the table for you, can make us feel like, oh my gosh, you see me, like, I'm so turned on by this. Thank you. I mean, it's not like high arousal, but still, like, feeling seen is so important.
Yes.
And so that would be like if someone said, like, oh, and I hear this all the time, where one person is feeling kind of more taxed. That would be kind of where I think something's breaking down in the emotional intimacy aspect. And so being able to talk about that, about some of those turnoffs, or you talked about Emily Nagoski talking about responsive desire, but brakes and accelerators. That's a huge break for a lot of people. And so how do we lessen that? And that is through emotional intimacy and communication.
I think about some of my patients whose roles have changed, like now they've become a caregiver to their lover or partner, and how that can throw a whole monkey wrench and be challenging, and how you have to be a little creative, and how do you shift. Another one too is, I'm sure you've had this with, now they're parents for first time, and now this is the mother of my child, and how I feel funny about that, or whatever. So I think when roles shift, especially when they shift, that caregiver one is a big one I see that can be challenging. And then that maternal, or that shift, or, whatever, where you're like, can I be mom and lover too? Or can I be caregiver and lover too? That can be challenging, but we both know it can be done, and it absolutely can happen.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is like the compartmentalizing, because like I agree. I work with a lot of cancer patients, and it is like it's a big thing where we have to be a patient caregiver role, but then how do we make sure we're partners again? And so but I do think that happens in this like emotional intimacy and physical intimacy, because we stop doing some of those. We kind of take on a different mindset. And so making sure that we're talking about things that differentiate us from a patient caregiver into partners, or parents into partners. I have a lot of people who go on dates and all they talk about their kids. I'm like, oh my gosh, please don't. Please talk about something else, anything else. But it's hard. It's sometimes hard to put that away.
Right.
It's so dominant in our lives.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily dichotomous. One doesn't negate the other. It doesn't. They can both exist in the same world. You can be caregiver and lover too. But yeah, I think those are that was an interesting question. The next question is, if we want to rebuild intimacy that feels awkward or disconnected, what are some small first steps we can take that don't feel forced? Because then it feels like, okay, now the therapist told me to do this, and here we go. So, Okay,
I have a saying that I used to say more, and I guess I don't say anymore, but like, life is one big awkward moment. Let's just be weird. And so I tend to take a much more desensitization approach. And so I'm like, go full bore weird. And you know what I liken it to though? I liken it to learning a foreign language. And so I took French and I took Spanish. And I hated standing up in front of the class and being like, je m'appelle Claire. It feels so uncomfortable and so awkward and so clunky, but you have to do it to practice it. And so it's going to feel clunky. Accept that as part of it and make a joke out of it, lighten it up a bit. And so laugh at it, because it is like, do you want to engage in some sexual intimacy with me? Like, I do. Or I have a lot of people where it is, it feels performative to have a serious conversation. And so I'm like, yep, let's use a structure and be a little bit, robotic until we feel more confident in that role.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Use the script until we can work off script. And same with physical intimacies, I will sometimes have people, because decision-making fatigue is a thing, like being overstimulated by what to pick in terms of physical touch and intimacy. If it's fallen off, I could do this and I could do this and then nothing happens. And so sometimes I'll have people write down all the physical intimacies you've ever engaged in with each other. And then you're going to pick one each day and you're going to practice it so much. Or if it is kissing, we're going to kiss way too much. But we're going to really just kind of again, desensitize ourselves to it by going full bore into it. But I love awkwardness. Don't be afraid of it.
And have fun with it, because especially as you get older, you got to have a good sense of humor, because my wife will be like, what was that sound? Was that weird or what? I mean,
that humor was the me. Yeah.
It's like
it's super awkward. Let's
totally
let's not lie to ourselves here.
And we're not laughing at the other person. We're laughing at the situation and ourselves. And another thing sometimes my friend and I will say is, let your nerd flag fly. It can be very liberating and very fun. Yeah. So so many good things. Gosh. I would like to go to a centering exercise to get everybody centered, and then I will come back to us in just a minute. But let's do what we do in this podcast. And so as we move towards closing today, I'd like to offer you a brief reflection. If you're able, get comfortable. Take a slow breath in and gently exhale. Find yourself seated or feet flat on the floor or lying, whatever's comfortable. Slow breath in, gently exhale. Let your shoulders drop as you exhale. Allow your jaw to soften. Bring to mind your partner, or if you're not partnered, someone with whom you desire deep intimacy or connection. Instead of focusing on what feels missing, shift your attention to the different dimensions of intimacy. Keep breathing in your nose and out your mouth as you ask yourself, where do we feel emotionally close, this person and I? Where do we feel distant? When do I feel most seen by this person? When do I pull back? Breathe in your nose and out your mouth. Notice without judgment. This isn't about right or wrong. It's just about awareness. Gently ask, what's one small way I could expand intimacy this week? Not sexually, but relationally. A moment of curiosity, a vulnerable statement, a soft touch without any expectations. Take one more deep breath in, gently exhale. Intimacy isn't a single act. It's a living system. And small shifts create meaningful change. Carry that with you as you move forward into your day. Well, I'm going to go to Vic and ask him what's up next week on Dr. Jeff Talks About Sex and Intimacy.
In this episode of Dr. Jeff Talks About Sex and Intimacy, I dive into one of the most common and most misunderstood questions men have after prostate cancer treatment. What will happen to my sexual function? Joining me is world-renowned urologist and focal therapy expert Dr. Seti Guy Nejid. to unpack the science, outcomes, and real-world experience of men undergoing partial gland cryoablation for prostate cancer. Join me on March 17th at 7 p.m. Central Time to learn more.
That's going to be a great episode. Dr. Siddiqui is a wealth of information and a great colleague, and so I'm looking forward to that. And Vic, you're doing awesome from your basement. We have tornadoes where Vic is, and so he is literally doing all this work from his basement today, and so we so appreciate you hanging in there and getting the podcast done. But I truly appreciate you, Claire. What fun it's been to learn from you and to think about broadening. Really, you've really challenged our listeners to think about sex and intimacy in a broader, more way. And I think that's great. So thank you so much for joining me first and foremost. I really appreciate
it. I love this.
And also, I wanted to give you that chance to give. So what final words do you want to tell listeners before we end our podcast?
Yeah, I think the most important thing to be thinking about with sex is not just penetration. Intimacy is not just sex. I have the patients that I see that have the most fruitful sex lives most often does not end in penetration. And so that is, I think, what I'm going to end with.
I love that message. And we preach that message all the time on Dr. Jeff Talks About Sex and Intimacy. We've had some great episodes on non-penetrative sex and outer course, and even expanding beyond that too. It just, the intimacy piece of it, I think, is so important. So I love that message. So listener, I just want to remind you that you are enough. You are so, so worthy of love and belonging and pleasure. And pleasure can come in lots of different forms, as we learned from our amazing guest tonight, Claire Postl. So I hope you'll remember that, and I hope you'll explore all that with someone that you would love to do that with. Have a great one, and goodbye.
As Dr. Jeff talks about sex and intimacy, breaking down the science, setting your spirit free with stories, wisdom, laughter, and care. Connection